Greetings, brothers and sisters. This is not another Hollywood celebrities dropping like flies. I had kind of an inspirational realization last night, which I'll get into in a moment. But let's start here. This says license to shill, and then it says 2020 lies could sink local Fox News affiliates. Um, they mock the truth community and they mock, whatever, the people on the left and the media. But they always steal our stuff. Like shill has been a, big word in the truth community now for, 15 years or so. Right? Like it's, the rebirth of shill or people's introduction to the word shill did not exist until the truth community made it something that people knew about. And, this is a lot of the movements you see now are based in stuff that happened in the truth community years ago or, even more recently. And they always steal our stuff. Like they always steal these things. They say that people in the truth community are crazy, but it's not just the liberal media, but it's also the right wing. It's, Trump, it's whatever it is. It's the major parties and people who haven't changed at all, and they're not really have a truther mentality, which is a good introduction for what I'm about to talk about here. So, I had a kind of a couple of realizations. I took a long nap yesterday. So, and then I went to bed. I was tired early on and went to bed. I want to say somewhat early, but 11 something. And then I woke up because I had taken a nap earlier and I didn't want to get up and do anything, but I had this whole, what I'm about to share with you just came to me like a whole stream of realizations. In part it was due to a really stupid comment by one of the big Parasite's followers. And, I was thinking about how the trolling has been so subpar coming from his group. Like really bad. Like it's not, good quality trolling. And trolling in general keeps me engaged with something because I move on from my videos. Like I make a video and I move on, like almost immediately. And in this case, wanted to move on. But then there'll be these comments that I feel like, wow, I want to make a comment video about this. Or people will keep me connected to something. Because of their comments, I realize there's whole levels of thought and, I get more an idea of the mentality out there. Like this happened a lot with Michael Jackson, for example. Like I made one video about him and wanted to move on, but people were his fans and they're saying like he's a truther. I was weird. And then I just, would start thinking about things. Like stuff would come to me, information, which it comes through like this, etheric process, a meditative, state that I get into. And then, once the information's there, I'm like, well, I'm supposed to share it, right? Like, very, very seldom does something come to me through through an inspirational situation where I don't share it, right? I might have to change it a little bit because YouTube's rules or something, I might have to edit some things out, but for the most part, I can just share it the way it is. And once that happens, like that happened in the initial big Parasite video. I want to say this too, because I feel like I need to say this on both channels. I don't want to promote this guy because, I don't want to promote anybody, especially, someone who I don't respect and believe is a good person. There's people that do good work, and if I see it, I'll say something about it. But obviously, this is not someone that, I believe it should be getting attention. It's a destructive force out there, a malignant force in the truth community, not a real truther, whatever. And so people using his name, his birth name or whatever, or Big Bear, these other things, that comment's either going to be, deleted or, the person's going to be banned depending on the nature of the comment. Like he's gotten so much from me over the years, parasitically taking my, my stuff and other people's stuff he doesn't deserve my, promotion of him or yours or anybody else's. And so henceforth here, it's either Big Parasite or Big P or, whatever you want to say. Um, BP or, that's how he'll be known, because there's no reason to drive traffic to his situation. I mean, it's actually a bad thing to do it. And that's, partly the way I wanted to jump off because of the, to this whole thing that I'm going to say. But anyways, because of that comment, right, these really bad troll comments, I realized that, the people he has there are subpar. They're subpar at whatever. Anybody who was, good or was, whatever has left there. I mean, there's so many people that realized it was a scam or realized that he was a bad person, because I've gotten so many like good, well-written comments about people and their realization, right? And, I never had much issue with these people before. Some of the flat earthers, I want to get into the flat earth thing in a bit too, because that's key to this. These people have left like weird comments. Like they're trying to troll me. I'm like, why would you even do this? And, it'd be in your best interest for me just to forget about it, because, I never really wanted to be involved with this in the first place. And as, when I stopped thinking about it, it's been a week since I made that video. And like I said, felt so bad. I had my lower back issues, and I hadn't had something like that in a while. Because, I lifted something that was just too heavy for me to lift. And it took a while for it to develop, and then, it was there for a couple weeks. And then I heard it again. I picked up I picked up a thing of chicken feed and fed the chickens, and like after it was getting better, and it, hurt it again. And then I just, had a headache that day, and I just felt heavy, and I was connecting with the energy and this person, and, it was a real bummer. And it was a long video, and I was going to say something, there's things I edited out. I was going to say something about the flat earth. I'll talk about that in a bit. That belief. And so, I have been eager to move on because I didn't want to make the video in the first place, because I didn't want to connect any deeper. And I had no idea. Like, it's been a good thing because I've had realization about cord cutting. I got into the, some of the personality disorder stuff. I mean, it's all these things that I've, been able to see. And there's things that people have been saying to me for years, but I wasn't really paying attention to them. And now I understand a lot more from the comments. You can read the comment section of these people who trusted this guy and were into it and got burned. And like I said, if they had been more, once in a while one of these people would say, oh, it's flat, one of the bear people or something, something, and would get banned, whatever. But for the most part, as a group, they've been not bad. They haven't been, negative on my channel, the ones that were here. Like some of them, it's a small percentage of his audience that was here, maybe 100 or so people, and maybe like 50 regular commenters. And some of those people have disappeared, and that's fine. But I knew initially that his audience was not like my audience, just based in the people he was targeting. Like there was, the flat earth people and, right-wing people and, people who hate, Jewish people and, all this stuff. There's a level of, a type of person that his rhetoric would appeal to. And, now I kind of understand how it all went, and I understand why they're still behind him and all these things. The people who are, after all the stuff he's done in his group, because he's had some big issues in his group that I've just found out about through comments from people. And there's been like, lots of them are leaving, and like the better ones, right? Because, like just his personality, his hostility, and his, dishonesty and, parasitic nature. Like it doesn't last. And, he's getting exposed, in recent events, he's gotten exposed long before, I made my video. Like this has been going on for, years and months, and more intensely, for a couple of months. And if it wasn't for these comments, I wouldn't know anything about it. I would have moved on. The whole thing, I never would have made the video had they not wanted me to look at Dr. Shiva and told me about the interview that he did with them. And, that was like, there's things that just come to me in an organic way. that I'm like, well, I meant to see this. I meant to say something about this. Like, this is one of those things. And these comments are continuing on with that, right? So it's like the self sabotage over there is incredible. But this video, like, this is an example that what I'm going to talk about is an example of something, like a social dynamic and stuff to do with the truth community. But it's going to have more profound spiritual implications and things I've never said before. This is, at best, anything I cover here that's something that's bad in the system, celebrity culture, and all these things. It's to contrast it with the spiritual way of life, the higher developed consciousness, connecting to God internally. And this is a great way to do that. Like, I haven't done it in this way before. Something to do with the truth. Like, I've done a lot with Hollywood and politics and, materialism and things. Our economic system, but not with some, dysfunctional truther group or, fake truther group. But to start off with, I was going to allow people to experiment and feel the transmission that's given in the Sagemark system. It's not a great way to do it because I'm only going to, transmission is only going to flow through me for 5 minutes. And, it's not like everyone would feel it in that kind of a circumstance. I don't know if I would have experienced it the first time in 5 minutes. So it's not the best way to, go about this in terms of somebody, being able to feel a transmission or not. But it is, something that some people will. And so I'm going to say, please begin. And, this is something people are welcome to do or fast forward, but it's kind of important to the rest of the video. And some people can come back to it later and try it again if they, whatever. But it's just whether you feel something or not when transmission is flowing. And this is important to everything that I'm going to say and what I talk about the Sagemark system, because it's one of those things where there are experiences that you have. And the experience of it and being sensitive to the transmission, being able to feel it is, important to anybody doing the system. And this isn't like introduction to the system or I'm trying to get you to do it. I want people to have a sense of whether they feel something or not when I talk about transmission. Because people who watch my videos often feel it and they feel energy, but they don't know what it is. And, this is a better way of assessing that. So I'm going to say, please begin, and then I'm going to, transmit for, transmission is going to flow through me for about 5 minutes. And then I'll say that's all, and then I'll continue on with this video here. Please begin. Okay, that's all. What I should have said is people, you need to close your eyes and attune to your heart, like I should have gave these instructions. So if you want to go back and try it again, that's fine. This experiment's going to be important later on. And if you didn't try it here and you want to go back and try it, you can as well. Because things are going to say, and maybe you'll be interested in it. Then I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. Uh, but I'll come back to this part. This is going to be about the hierarchy of human expression, like people who your pursuits in the material world and being connected to your soul and these other things. Um, but first, there was another comment I got this morning, and hopefully I saved it here, but I'm not sure if I did or not. Um, it says, the kind of comment I was getting. Um, Thanks, Pauls. And then there's an emoji, like a laughing face emoji. Unsubscribe because you promoted the boop. Well, I never promoted the boop because I don't know what this person's talking about. Like, I totally didn't promote it because I was against it before you guys even knew it was coming. Like, I, made my decision about this 20 years ago, right? Um, my kids were never booped, right? So my kids didn't ever get it. My kids didn't receive any of them. And so my kids are in their 20s now. And so when I first learned about this 20 years ago, I made my decision that this was not something that I was interested in receiving any of these things, right? Like it's not a science I believe in, which I said in the early stages of COVID, which I actually said beforehand. I made a video like 6 months before COVID came out. And I was talking about how it's, for me, given what was going on in the world, and, there's stuff that was being said by one Mr. Bill Gates that I said, for me, I'm looking at this time to boost my immune system. That I have to work on my immune system because things were coming, and this was me predicting something, not even predicting it because they said it was coming. They said it was coming. These people, Bill amongst them, and I made it clear that what I believed in terms of allopathic medicine doesn't work for me, but I don't believe in the boop, and like I said, my kids didn't get any of them, and that's my kids are it's 25 years, so I knew 25 years in advance what many of you just had to figure out now, and so like that's stupid, it's a stupid statement, right? It's like not based in reality, and these are the kind of comments I'm getting, right? Um, no, not it doesn't say thanks, Paul. It's thanks, Paula. So the person calling me a woman's name, like this is the kind of level of mockery, right? I mock people all the time, so I don't mind being mocked. Like, nobody loves it, but sometimes I find it funny. If it's good, it's funny, right? Like there was a great comment I got years ago where someone says, "Oh, I love you. I love listening to your voice. I like your voice." And then someone else responded underneath them, "Yeah, his voice is great. I like the sound of your voice," is what the person said. And someone else said, "Yeah, his voice is great." And then someone else wrote, "Not as much as that he likes the sound of his own voice," which is a great funny joke, right? That is um, and there's not really all that much truth in it, at least for now, because I've had to edit and listen to myself for years now. And so, I don't love it like, maybe I don't know if that was true back then. Probably not so much, but that's like a real burn, right? Um, in a funny one, like not, I mean, it's a good joke. But calling me Paula, like, I'm not, I mean, you know, nobody thinks of me as being an effeminate man. Like it's not, something that people who know me would say, like it's not a real burn. Paula, burn, like this is like no one would, these are childish people. Thanks, Paula, with a laughing emoji. Unsubscribes because you promoted the vaccine. Referred by the big parasite to Paula. R.I.P. Paul from Pockets, lost to the dreaded Holocaust, which is, I don't even know what that means. Um, and so it's just a weird comment. Like it's the person gets everything wrong. It's more confusing than like, are you okay? Like, it's like somebody's trying to make fun of you and you're worried they're having a stroke or something. Are you all right, bro? Like, are you having a mental meltdown? Like, what's going on, right? You're not having a cardiac arrest or something because it's like you're not right. And like, there's so many of these comments like that, like just weird. And there, again, less comments than I would have thought. And then the ones that are there are like not based in anything. But then there was this comment last night. I'm going to show you the comment because the person did a lot of extra typing for no reason. Like, well, you'll see it for yourself. Let me just show you that. Okay, so before we get to the comment, a comment just came in. I started to edit this, and I thought it was worth reading here. And the person says, I set a standard of being able to listen with my kids around. I was breaking my own rule for the big Parasite, BP. Somebody's already on board with this, with the BP. Just needed a negative interaction with someone, and I appreciate to help reorient me. I could see he was toxic, but he would wrap it up in a message that was motivational. For a minute, he was living in a close proximity to his kids. He was avoidant of things like cursing, and that drew me in. It seems that was his new marketing, family-oriented. I guess they had a gathering, and he was saying that this was going to be the new, less vile, less angry. I mean, he wrote to me saying that I had helped him, realize he didn't have to do all these things to tell the truth. Of course you don't. But, I was doubtful that he was sincere by that just based on what I saw happening with that guy Curtis Stone, is it? And just the Richmond North and Oliver Anthony and these guys just, going after them in a way that wasn't just over the top and aggressive and, insulting and kind of demonic. This changed quickly. So it says, it seems like his new marketing, family-oriented. This changed quickly. When he attacked you, I could feel it in my heart. I have seen him intermittently in the past, and everything about him would change, including his message. I think my aggressive nature was what made me tolerate him. I know that having an open heart and having tools to eliminate trauma are more positive focus. Most people want change to be like a light switch. BP was the one who suddenly changed, then justify. Who would suddenly change and then justify. Obvious red flag from psych perspective. It's repetition and repeated actions, repeated interactions and fear that have stronger effect. The concept of homesteading and having to protect your animals in order to be close to your food is so eye-opening. I recently got started with chickens and goats. A lot of hard moments, but the amount of you learn about life is worth so much. Putting something in your body that wasn't loved, probably not a good idea. Thanks for opening yourself up to the slings and arrows, Paul. I just wanted to add that because it's going to be important in the context of these other things. But these are the kind of comments people are writing, and you can see them in the videos. I have the two videos that are, specifically about this topic, and other places where I've, touched on some of these things, and some of the thoughts I've had post the release of the first couple of videos and comments and other things like this one. People get mad at me because I confront their belief system. I'm not friendly. I'm not, if you meet me, it's not like some great interaction. I'm not good socially, but the majority of people who watch my videos, some of them complain about how slow I talk and things, and, calling me drowsy or whatever. Some people use the videos to go to sleep, and that is what it is. But it has a calming effect. People have said over and over again, they listen to other truthers and they feel anger and fear and hatred. And, someone like, the big Parasite, even worse, people who traffic in that. and it has a negative effect on them, and then just they just they can't socialize with other people, and they're just grumpy all the time. They feel bad when you stop listening to them. I mean, that's how I would feel if I listened to them. People are more sensitive to it. They can feel the energy. And, that's not truth, right? Like, as bad as things are, you want things that are going to help you cope. Like the Sajmark system of meditation helps people cope no matter what time it is, whether the system collapses or not, or whether everything's going great. If you use it, it'll help you cope, because you have to learn to cope with success as much as you do with failure. As much as you do with pain, you have to learn how to cope with pleasure. Like, you have to be moderate and balanced, and pleasure and success can go to your head, and I mean they're almost worse for you than failure and pain, right? In fact, they're much more of a lure, and they're much more of a trap than fear and pain are, right? But anyways, let's get back to the other thing here. So the person writes, this is why I'm showing you. Greetings, brothers and sisters. OP. Sorry. Oops. I guess it was supposed to be oops. But oop. Sorry, let me wipe the hummus off of my shirt. Person put a lot of effort into this. Like, lots of extra consonants, no voice to text here, right? And, I realized that they have these various talking points, the comments, and there's people saying that I'm trying to be a prophet, which I'm not. Like, anybody who knows me knows that I want no part of any of that kind of stuff. Any sort of spiritual title, and, other people saying I have a God complex, and that was very limited. That was, just a few comments like that. And then there was a bunch that was, trying to mock my channel for not being, deep and being like Hollywood. For a guy who came out of Hollywood, their fearless leader is someone who, he went in and, tried to make it in Hollywood, and then whatever happened there, and then tried to come in here and run a scam, right? So it's like that person actually is a Hollywood person, and I make occasional Hollywood videos. So they, brought up the Britney stuff, whatever it is. And Britney is made up of, like, any of those type, even that type of celebrity video makes a small percentage of what I do here. And I've explained it over and over again. Like, it's not a burn. Like, it's, something that I've, like a thing I didn't want to do, I did just to keep the channel going. And, I've learned to like it, but in the beginning I didn't want to do it. Like, I was, ordered by God. God showed me that to do this, I was going to have to dive into the beast. And Holly was a part of that, and other parts. Things I don't care about, and people know I don't care about it, right? So that's like a couple of weird angles to go and try to attack somebody, right? Because what you're doing is trying to maximize and create narratives. So you're either trying to undermine my audience by saying things that are, my audience will be like, oh, is that true about him? Like, this kind of thing, and I mean, it's not going to undermine me with my audience. And if it did, like, if a person would fall for something like that, I think that's, I mean, most people wouldn't understand it anyway, because the comments are so poorly written. And, they're in this sort of cult language, like Scientology when Tom Cruise was talking, and, they have this way of expressing them, right? There'll be the gamma, these kind of things that they say over there, gamma and beta and all this stuff, which is, weird in itself. And then all the bear stuff weirds people out in the first place. People calling themselves bear. And that's the other thing. If you are going to refer to yourself as a bear, just don't comment here. Like, that's fine if you want to watch the videos. And like I said, there's been lots of these bear people who have been, good citizens in this comment section. But, the whole bear thing is weird. And I'll get into that more later on. So the other thing is to make me, the person you're trolling, feel ashamed and doubt themselves, right? So these are the ways people, mock other people. And so this person saying this part right here. So here's the big burn. Oops, let me wipe the hummus off my shirt. Now, this is something I gave the big Parasite. This is material that they're mocking me with. that I just admitted. Like, this is something they only know about me because I said it. What I said in a video was I buy extra shirts, like these collared shirts, and usually it happens like we'll go out to eat, and infrequently. Um, I don't, we don't love. I don't love restaurant food because of the energy that's in restaurants, but it is what it is. And even if I'm really careful, somehow I always get food on my shirt. Like, I'm a messy person. I talked about this when I cook food. My wife is going around closing the drawers and stuff I open so I don't spill stuff in them, and I make lots of meals, and I've always been somebody who there's a sloppiness to what I do. I'm dyslexic, and my handwriting is horrible. My dad's was worse. My brother's was worse. My dad had a combination of he would write with cursive and print. Like, there would be some letters he would put print, some letters he would make cursive. But I have really bad handwriting. These things, like I'm dyslexic. I have these things, and I'm kind of a messy person in some ways. I clean up, but and some of that is I spill food like on my shirt, like all the time. Like no matter how I even if I am mindful of it and try not to, it just happens. And the big parasite, because he watched all my videos, because he was parasiting, right? And absorbed all these things and thought this was a good thing to try to burn me on, to make me sound like I was, a low functioning person, which, I've said before, I'm an underachiever. I'm kind of a slacker. And, it's something I'm aware of, like I've been aware of for years. And so I'm not going to be affected by something I know about myself. I openly admitted this is what I do, like this kind of person I am, because people think I'm better than I am or whatever. I've said other things that humanize me, like make me more understandable. And knowing these things about myself, there was a woman that I would have potentially dated. Like, I think I had a couple of phone call conversations with her. This is like 7 years ago, 6 years ago, whatever it was, 2000, I don't know, 16 or something. And then she said she was OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. And I said, okay, this isn't going to work, right? Literally just like that, because my ex was OCD and a perfectionist, and I am not. I'm not a perfectionist, and I am the opposite. I'm an OCD person's worst nightmare, right? And so, like, just knowing those things about yourself. So it's not a burn, like, I don't think of myself as perfect. And if I said something, I'm not ashamed of it. I'm not, and this is the tactics they're using. But these are their talking points and demonizing me in some way, that I spill stuff on my shirt. Most people find that like cute and endearing, right? Like, some people would drive crazy, but, and listening to it as an audience member, whatever. And that's what you got at me. Like, that's the stuff that you think, makes me like a bad person or whatever it is, right? Like, I have food on my shirt, that I'm a slob. Like, that's, what I'm talking about with Big Parasite is that he's a parasite. Like, I don't say things that aren't true. Like, I don't say things that I don't believe to be true. I don't say things just to hurt people's feelings. I don't, create false narratives. Like, I don't try to demonize somebody and make up things that aren't true, which is what he's doing over there. Because he really can't, say the things that I can say truthfully about him, right? And I'm not even getting into it. Like, I haven't mocked him for, the reason, like, made mocking videos, like, showing clips and dissecting him and, his mannerisms and these things that he does, because there's psychological tells and stuff that you can see just from how loud he is and the way he expresses himself. And, it's very mockable. Like, I could do that, but I don't want to promote him, right? I don't, this is, doing this was something that I'm not wanting to give him more attention, because, I feel like he's parasited enough off of me, right? But that's an actual thing that people are like, yeah, that's a good description of this guy, because, that's what he is. It's this is one of his defining characteristics, to parasite, to leech on to people, truthers, and, groups of people, and suck as much off of them as he can. And then when the person calls him on it, he attacks them, right? I'm talking about a bad person here. what I know about him now and what I know about, whatever kind of relationship I had. Like I had no relationship, but he had a relationship to me. And the way that he explained and took my stuff, there's multiple bits that he took from me. And some of them I, saw, like I didn't show him in the video, but things people said. He stole my woo bit. He used to say, "How dare you," like the "how dare you" thing I did. And he was just stealing my bits. And that means he's been stealing bits from other comedians and other people, just stealing it, like stealing their, and then stealing philosophy and these other things and presenting it as its own. And people have been telling me that for years. And now in the comment section, go read the comment section. So that's his relationship. Like he's been, parasiting off of my material. And then, the other aspects of this, what he's done with his community and, just a bad person. This is a bad person, like, evil, like this, in the grips of evil. And, I got stuff on my shirt. You understand this? Like, it's just like, what, that's where you're going with this, right? Like, oh, you got stuff on your shirts. And then the other things are not true. Like this person saying I promoted the boop when I knew before you did. Like, I knew 25 years ago what I was going to do when COVID hit. Like I already made my decision. Like I was not, I was not going to partake. And I explained it, the best I could. And people think I was promoting it. Like, how did you come up with that? It's blatantly false. And I don't know if the big parasite's saying that or what. I don't even know what's happening with all that. But, it made me think about what kind of people are there. Like, these people who are supporting this guy who has these rants and, that he's just streaming hate and anger and, it feels bad to listen to him. Like I was like, this guy's just, the energy that he exudes, it's toxic, right? He's very low vibrational and he's, appealing to people who are low vibrational. And that led me to, realize the way this has worked out and the way that he's gone about recruiting people. And the reason why initially I wasn't psyched that he was talking about me, right? I mean, some of the talking about me, which I said, was his, I've read some of the comments. People felt this. Like he was getting street cred in the truth community by saying he liked various truthers, me included. And people who trusted me or trusted somebody else and said, all right, well, if this guy likes them and, I like this person, then this person's like that. And he was linking himself to us and he was getting credibility because of it, which I think is purposeful and is like is a strategy yet. And then, all the rest of it, all those things that go with that kind of thing. A name dropper. He's like a name dropper. So this comment is leading to, and there's a lot of comments in here, that people were telling me what happened there. People who were there in this thing, this cult, and it only can be a cult because a person like that doesn't have something else, right? A person of that isn't capable of rising up and doing a good thing. He's had blowouts with members and, threatened one member. Some guy recorded him and, these people have left because of it. And, I'm like, why would you be staying there? Why would you be attracted in the first place? And this person writing this comment, a comment that's doesn't have the effect that it's a desired effect because, for me, it triggered, like it set off a series of realizations of things that, I would have no way of knowing had this experience not happened with people commenting and then me, going deeper in the rabbit hole because I made the first video. Like I had to dive into it a little bit and I had to contemplate this person and the audience and this movement that's happened, this parasitic movement in the truth community. Okay, I went to eat breakfast and I want to continue on here. I just had one more thing to add about that comment. I'm going to show us a series of flat earth images, things that were in a folder I have because I'm going to get to that in just a bit. In, a minute. Like, I don't know the last time I ate hummus, right? And this is again with the caricature. Like they don't know what I eat. Like you don't know me. Like you don't like. I don't know if I've ever spilled hummus on my shirt. If I, quite possibly, but it wouldn't be a regular occurrence. Like ketchup would have been a better, something like that. Something that is drippy, right? But to these group of people who, or like patting each other on the back. Oh my God, that was a great burn. Like they would think these things are burns, right? I gotta wipe the hummus off my shirt. Burn, right? And it's not knowing your subject matter. It's creating a caricature, which is what the big Parasite does. He creates caricatures of people that him and his audience will go into this culty egregore of like how cool it is and how right on he is, but everyone else is scratching their head and saying, "You guys are weird, right? You guys are walking around naming yourself bears and shit, like." But so what I realized was, my dog's not wanting to jump up in the bed for some reason. Here she goes. All right, she's sitting there whining, but like all she had to do is jump up. I don't know. Once in a while that happens. But usually when I call her, she'll jump right up, like it's some kind of thing, like because she can't see, she can't see what's going on in the bed, like and Buddy's already up here. So the big Parasite targeted an audience, which I knew about. People told me about it. I saw it in his, whatever his rhetoric, and really didn't give it much thought. But I think it's a profound understanding of what's going on in the world, the truth community, and spirituality and connection to God and all these things, which I'm going to talk about now. So he went after a group of people who, flat earthers was one of the precursors of the group, being a flat earther, and people who want to blame Jews for everything and maybe blacks and other groups, right? And he was going to talk about things where, these groups of people were either inferior or, were causing problems. There's a bunch of people who want to blame Jews for everything. They want to blame, the Jewish people for everything that's going on in the system. Like I get comments from people like that from time to time. And for example, they blamed, these were white Christian, Anglo-Saxon type people coming from England who, their ancestors took slaves, right? English people colonized countries and took slaves. And they said that Jewish people tricked them into doing it, tricked them into taking slaves, tricked them into invading countries, colonizing countries, right? And that they're, good people. They're just based in their heritage, right? And, that's not true. Like you did this stuff, like you made these decisions. Another thing they'll say is that black people wanted to be slaves, that they were volunteering, they wanted to come here and whatever. To America. And so they have these ideas that, most people would kind of find abhorrent and delusional to the extent that, there's no personal responsibility. There are things with all these demographics. There are stereotypes. There are things that, each culture, each group of people, each race, each, that are things that you have to get over or you have to change in yourself based in the culture you grew up being. Americans one thing, and then your ancestry and these things, that there are tendencies that are there that are can be looked at and say this group of people's like this group of people like that, but all of us have some darkness or negativity and abusive stuff in our ancestry. Like our ancestors been a part of stuff that is kind of embarrassing in terms of the modern context. And you have to take, responsibility for that or just accept it. Like you don't have to define you, but you got to understand that this happened and that, over the course of history, human beings have behaved badly and have sucked on every level. And, there's good things too, but the bad things are there. And there was a third thing I think that, he targeted his audience with. And, you guys might even be thinking about it now and I'll, maybe come up with it later. But there's a group of people who are white people who feel disenfranchised. It's Trump's appeal, make America great again. And it's also, people like Andrew Tate, there's these people out there, men, men feeling, white men and men feeling they're being targeted and these things. And there's anger there and people thinking that, that their group is being targeted and demonized, which is happening, all across the board. Because they want division. Like each group that people identify with based in superficial aspects of themselves. Well, I guess the other thing was this beta gamma thing that he does, which is very, it's like almost like a caste system. Like it's a, it's fatalism, right? Um, and maybe there's something else I don't know. But these are the things that appeal to the people coming to his group. There are people who are feeling disenfranchised. The flat earthers were, just like everyone hated them in the truth community. Like there was, and then everyone else is mocking them. And just like, you guys believe in flat earth, it's like, like how stupid are you? So outside the truth community, the flat earthers were, flat earthers, right? They were like a, just by definition, like, stupid and whatever. The, ideas about the people. And within the truth community, they were a nightmare. The whole flat earth movement. I'll get into that in a bit. But these people felt there was nobody, like, there's nobody substantial taking up their cause. And they felt very attacked. Like we all feel attacked in the truth community, and the flat earthers feel even more attacked because, they get it even from truthers. And they have no idea why. And they, based on their behaviors and the way that they went about everything, they're clueless to why people don't like them. And they were the beginning of the Cubies. And I know that a big Parasite embraced the Q people in the beginning because that was the kind of people he was drawing to him. And these were right-wing people who were right-wing truthers that, hated the liberals and hated the, everything, right? To do with what's the, that power demographic, but never confronted the right-wing stuff. So they're not really truthers, right? This was inherent to their belief system, and they just became more extreme. They were Republicans who just went farther right instead of, facing the truth and becoming a truther. So they weren't real truthers. And they were, the flat earthers gave birth to the Cubies. A lot of the Cubies are flat earthers. And this movement was a cancer on the truth community, which I've talked about before. It was a cancer because they were so divisive. They were so ignorant, so difficult to deal with. Their personalities sucked. Their way of expressing everything, they made everything more extreme. They claimed things that weren't true, or they couldn't prove as facts. And they brought all this energy to the truth community that ultimately, whatever was left of the truth community, I mean, truth community was what it was. But post flat earthers and post Cubies, it's been decimated because of that, and they just basically hijacked it. Like there was more Cubies than truthers, like at some point, there for a while. And Big Parasite was cultivating these people, right? Was bringing them to him. And the people who like hate Jewish people were also a part of that, and then all the stuff to do with, other groups, blacks, and the rest of them, right? And so here comes this guy who's connected to Hollywood. Immediately gives him some sort of, even though people, thinks Hollywood's evil, but he left Hollywood. Like, wow, like this great guy who's left Hollywood. And he's telling us he believes what we believe. Somebody with, he was like a better person to them, like someone who's on a higher level than them. And he's endorsing their belief. And so telling them everything they want to hear, right? Saying all the things that they want to hear. And, waiting for somebody with, authority and somebody with, all of it. He was willing to get burned by the system, get kicked out of like all these platforms, lose PayPal and do these things. Because he was saying these things that people want to hear, all this stuff that was, being banned and targeted on YouTube and these other places. And, that made them, I mean, like in terms of building a cult, right? This is a, wonderful thing for them, right? These people who, no one's speaking up for them and, anybody who is. And this is why Trump had such a strong following. Because these people felt disenfranchised, and it's a large group of people in the truth community, and especially with the flat earthers. So he had a very passionate group of people, and then they could come together and form a community of people like that, where they could support each other, and they have their own lingo, and they can mock everybody else. And the flat earthers believe they're so right, and anybody believes the round ball theory is so crazy, and they're the only ones with the truth, and they're there's a level of desperation there, and there's a desperation because it's all wrong, right? It's a lack of ability for them to change. When you start doing the Sajmarg practice of meditation and you read the philosophy, there's nobody who's prepared for it. There's nobody who has that as their belief system. Like everybody coming into Sajmarg is going to have to change the way they view the world. And I love the literature because like I, never had something I believed in, I mean, for brief periods of time in my youth, but like I just didn't, check any of the boxes of the things that the American dream and the things that exist here. Like I was like, this is not why I'm here. And so when I read the literature and the philosophy, I clearly had past lives as a yogi and, understood these things. And it was information that was already inside of me to some extent. I mean, some of it's new anyway, some of it's never been presented before. But it was like, it resonated with me on a level where, okay, this is it, right? This is the stuff, right? This is the real stuff. This is, ground level truth, like spiritual truth, like just, this is why you're here to connect to God internally. This is the real, your soul's real goal of human life. The real purpose that people are here is to move forward spiritually, and this idea of samskaras and the transmission, the cleaning, all the things that are there, everything in the philosophy. And when I heard it, it just resonated with me. But applying it to my life has always been difficult. And I do it like probably better than the majority of people who do Sajmark. Like most people don't even think about changing, because I wasn't attached to the other stuff before. In fact, I rejected it. I rejected American life, right? Didn't like it. And then when I found something that was like pure and real, I was more of a blank slate because I wasn't, embedded in the system in ways. But even with that, with all the habits I've gotten into, all the things I've developed, things that don't even matter to me, but just, habitual life and how I've been orientated to life, in terms of, American training, but people all around the world, whatever it is, you have to change that when you come to Sajmark. And it's very difficult. It's why people have failed, why Sajmark and, now Heartfulness has, failed with people, because people may embrace the philosophy, but practically applying it to their life is really difficult. And also the selfishness that we're all given in this modern day system, and then turning into a person who's service-oriented and service-oriented towards God. And, it's a higher level thing. And most people can't rise up to it, and I've struggled with it. We all do. And so that's about change, right? But if someone comes along and says everything you believe is good and right, which is what Trump did and what the big Parasite did, and this person, has whatever, a little bit of charisma, a little bit of whatever they have, and now someone's telling you don't have to change and what you've believed all along is right, and, validating you. And so, of course, he was going to have a very loyal following. Like he was going to, bring these people in. But these people, this groups of people, I wanted nothing to do with, because I had already gone through the flat earth nightmare and saw what was happening with the cubies. And I knew how that had affected the truth community. And, we had lost credibility because of the flat earthers, and they were just such a divisive group, pig-headed and stubborn and just difficult to deal with. And, the gang stalking and all the things that they did. And the infighting they had with each other, I mean, they were just, just a nightmare, right? Just like a nightmare of a group. And then they became the cubies and got even worse, right? Like, and I'd seen all that. And then the stuff with, the targeting people, like targeting Jewish people or black people or any group, I knew that was disastrous. It was going to backfire. It was going to hurt all of us in the truth community. And they're going to paint us all as anti-Semitic racists. And they wanted that. They wanted somebody like Big Parasite to come in and these other people and do the things he did so they could, demonize us all and label us all as a group. And, it's just, it was like bad for the rest of us. But it was good for him because he could get financial support and loyalty from people who were so desperate to have somebody agree with them. And, people kind of had tried to tell me this over the years. I just didn't want to know about it. I don't care. It wasn't my problem. But I knew I didn't really want these people here because we're opposite in our approach to everything. And certainly the flat earth stuff. And so when I, started to subtly, like say things that I hope that he and maybe his group would pick up on, and then other people in the truth community who are like this, and I've seen, there's more and more of this in the truth community where people feel threatened, they feel fearful, and they're starting to grab onto things that are anti-truth, right? That go against the whole being honest about, themselves and everything else. And so when he was, sort of attacking me or whatever, he said that he's wrong about everything. Like, I'm wrong about all these things. Even though He's somebody who's watched all my videos and, believed in what I believe in, at least, taken stuff and presented it to his group. And the stuff that's on my channel is oppositional to his core message. Somebody sent me a clip a while ago. I don't think I have it. No, I'm not going to, whatever. But this clip was of the big parasite saying how much he, liked me and these things, the greatness of my channel and my positions and my ability to say things. And people were saying, but he believes in this and he believes in that. And, the flat earth thing was part of it. Because my message and his message was completely different. But he was going into how I got nuclear power wrong, I got Dr. Shiva wrong, and I got flat earth wrong. And I was going to cover the flat earth thing. My video, like I had, was getting a headache, and the video was already going to be like 4 hours, 3 hours at that point. And so I admitted the flat earth. I just couldn't deal with it, right, at that time. But it's good because it's inherent to what I'm going to say here. So the flat earth stuff came up, I want to say in 2015. It was just starting. My channel was just taking off. And this was, I don't know when the big parasite entered the picture, 2018. Like time, I realized it had been a week since I made the video last week on Friday, the big parasite video. And I'm like, so much has happened in a week. And, there's big revelations in the Whispers of the Brighter World about Saj Marg. There's other things going on. And then just this thing and just, whatever. But time is flying by, like for me. My wife and I talk about how fast time is moving, which is, unfortunate, fortunate, whatever you want to say, depending on your point of view. But also, when I look back and go, wow, that was a year, it seems like that was 10 years. So things are more intense. Time seems to be moving quicker, and I don't know if that's just because as you get older, it moves quicker. But more is being packed into short periods of time, which, is all very interesting. But back in 2015, I was, I said something about whatever it was. And people said, well, the earth is flat, like some of my viewers. I'm like, what? What are you talking about? And like I knew all the truth or theories, but it was when the flat earth movement was starting, just in its initial stages. And I was in Sri Lanka at the time, which had a west-facing ocean, which, if you look at the ocean, you can see the curvature. You might not want to admit it, but it's very slight, but you can see it. But that is what it is. Flat earthers will never believe that. But I didn't know that at the time. And so I, looked at the original flat earth model, which was there was a stationary, flat earth, whatever it was, like a big island sitting in the middle of space. And the sun and the moon were rising above it. Then when at nighttime, it would pass under the earth and then back up on the other side. And so ancient people, that's what they believed. But then they had the problem with time zones, right? And I said, this can't work. And I said this to these people. I did a video, and a bunch of them, and they were regular commenters and people who were, were respectful and smart, and they were religious people, Christian people, whatever. But they, we had some differences, but they were, they were usually left good comments. This one guy had it looked like Santa Claus. He had like a Santa Claus beard. And he said, well, that's not the model, the flat earth model. So I said, where's your model? That's the working model. And they said, well, it's like this mobile thing where the sun and the moon were above the earth, at a certain distance. And they were spinning around like a mobile, like for a child's mobile, like a baby in their crib. They were spinning around, hovering above the earth. And I said, well, what are they spinning around? And the guy said, an unknown celestial object. And I'm like, well, you don't have a model then, right? Like I said, that's not a working model. Like that's not even a theory because, for one, that's not the way it works because the moon's all over the place. The sun has a pretty consistent path, but it's longer. It's a curvature. There's a curving path that the sun goes up, and I documented it when I was doing sun gazing. Like I got into the sun and I was watching this, without doing any kind of damage to my eyes and things like this. But I tracked the sun's path in the sky because it moves a little bit each day. And it comes out, it rises depending what time of year it is, right? It's either rising later or earlier each day by about a minute and 20 seconds or something. And when you sun gaze, you realize this, that the sun its path is not consistent. And the moon is all over the place. The moon is sometimes there during the day, sometimes it's over here, sometimes it's over there, sometimes on the opposite sides of the sun, sometimes it's on the same side, and it's, left, right, and the moon's all over the place. Like, it's not consistent at all. And so this model doesn't work, right? And to say it's an unknown celestial object, then there's a problem of what keeps it covering above the earth. You don't believe in gravity, but why is it? There's some kind of force that's rotating around, right? I'll come back to that. I'll put a meme in here of that thing. I've done that before. And it doesn't work. The model you don't have a working model because of time zones, because of everything in terms of the flat earth model. And I said that, and the people got pissed. They unsubscribed. They did whatever. But I was right. You don't have a working model when you're saying stuff like that. And then over the years, I asked people, because it kept on showing up. And some of them you could talk to, but most of them were difficult. And I said, show me a video. They said there was a working model out there. But then they sent me a 6-hour video. And 99% of it was about showing and proving the earth isn't round. Now, let me just say this. I believe that we're in a simulation. And that's, if you're a spiritual person, you believe the soul is real. The soul is eternal. The soul was created at the beginning of creation and will most likely, in most cases, and in very rare cases, it's destroyed. But it, is there from the beginning to the end. Soul energy. And soul energy is in everything, right? Like everything that's animated that comes to life here on Earth, and even the things like rocks and, trees, everything here, has soul energy behind it. It's like the code on a computer. And that's your real life. Like, we're avatars in many ways. Our soul has created our bodies like an avatar in a video game. And we have a very sophisticated simulation here. And everything on Earth is illusionary. And it feels so real because our souls are on a different, are much more subtle. They don't have gross physical bodies. Our physical bodies are grosser, and our, things that we have, appetites and all the things that we do. And this is what leads us away from the nature of our soul, our physical experience. That's why people get trapped and lost on Earth, because of how real it all seems. It seems realer than the etheric world, because the etheric world is, not the same. There's not density. There's not things you can touch and your senses, all these things. And so your soul gets lost here. Your subtle aspect of yourself gets lost. And your ego that's developed to cope with this, this life here is, whatever it is, becomes dominant, right? And it hijacks your soul's purpose. Like, that's the primary problem here on planet Earth. Everyone's egos have hijacked people away from why their soul incarnated here in the first place. And so, it's an illusion. And the whole Earth and all these things, whatever it is, but in that illusion, it's definitely not flat because the model doesn't work. And flat earthers are so clicked into this thing, they just say, it's flat. Like all these comments, it's flat, all these things, these bumper sticker comments. It's very annoying, but you can't talk to them. They're too stubborn. And no matter what you show them or how you express this, they just resist it. But when you ask them, like I asked multiple times, show me a version of a working model. And they gave me these long-ass videos that didn't have a working model. And I said, how many of you guys actually can explain flat Earth? And they couldn't, like how it works with time zones and all these things. Because the model, it can't work. It's just, it can't. It just can't work because of the, all the other things we know now. Back when people were primitive and they couldn't travel, they didn't know about time zones. When we didn't have an understanding of the world. And so, but there's things like the moon landing being fake and the, NASA being liars and things that are, that helps them keep their belief. And most of their belief is how the world isn't round and how it can be proved in so many different ways. When I first heard about it, I was like, well, the people who control the system lie about everything else. So I was open to it. But then I looked into it. I'm like, well, no, it doesn't fit, right? It doesn't, it's not, it can't be. And the model that you have, right? This idea of a firmament, this is all biblical stuff. And I'll get into the Old Testament, which sucks, in a moment. But we saw a certain type of personality develop, a stubborn personality that no matter what they were shown, they weren't going to change. They were going to, follow this flat earth thing until, they died. This was it. They were locking in. And the more information they got that was showing them that it wasn't true, the deeper they sunk their heels in and like put their fingers over their ears. And there was no talking to them. They were worse than sheeple. And they became this very hostile group that, it became a one issue thing for them. And it's why no matter what Big Parasite does, these people never leave them because it's the same thing. He's flat earth to them, right? But I doubt he's ever talked about the theory itself, like he has ever showed the model, like he's demonstrated the model, because his believers, his followers, already believed it, and he saw that this was a group that was ripe for harvesting. And I don't know what went on in his internal process, whether he is consciously grifting them or just he believes it himself. But I do know that he got into it with other prominent flat earthers. There's a guy who, he did a rap video. He's kind of like the father of flat earth. And this guy, used to be, I think he's a smart guy, but he's used to be okay. Like I think I read something of him when he was discovering that Alex Jones was a shill. And I thought it was, well written, and, he was an Alex Jones person, and then he, realized what everyone else realized about being COINTELPRO. And I thought it was well done. So I knew this guy when people told me about him, and I was predisposed to think he was a, smart and a reasonable person. But then I watched his flat earth stuff, and there was a time where he dressed up like a girl, and he was mocking other flat earthers. And then I saw that the flat earthers were warring with each other. Like they were so hostile and so messed up and just difficult to deal with that they couldn't get along with each other, right? And this guy and the Big Parasite got into it. And so, there's all this drama, but I doubt that people, the Big Parasite and then the people around him, have delved into any working model, because for them, they already know they're right, and nothing's going to dissuade them of that, which is the hallmark of the flat earthers, and then became even more so with the QBs when, Q was obviously a psychological operation being controlled by the intelligence community, and all of us could see they were getting worked. They just went deeper and deeper into it because they had become this isolated group that felt that was under attack, and everybody else was a shill and an enemy. And that's how they went about their business. And they were a nightmare to deal with. They did damage to all of us. They made life harder for all of us. And they just suck. They're horrible people who have gone down a deviant path because they're sure of something that doesn't even have a working model. And the fragility behind their assuredness, because reality is always ready to slap you in the face when you believe something isn't true. But the big, the Big Parasite was able to monetize all of that stuff, like all of the negativity that was there, and the fragility and the desperation and the belief systems of these people. He's able to monetize it and create a very loyal following that would, be behind him no matter what he did, even though he was at odds with the people who created that movement. And it must be much worse than it is because I know about it. Like I don't know, very little. It's just what people had sent me over the years and comments I read or whatever. So let me just show you one thing. This is something that I observed. And, it's not about trying to convince flat earthers because they can't be convinced. But it's about, what it was like to deal with them. Right? Obviously. But let's say you're watching a sunset and you'd be over here. And I noticed this when I've ever been at a beach or something where you have a western sunset, where the sun is set. You see, you're a west-facing beach where you can see the sunset. And what happens is that the sun is setting over here. And the idea for flat earthers is that when something is moving farther and farther away. It looks like it's moving downward because of perspective. Like when you see an airplane and as it travels through the sky, you watch its path, it seems to be going down, right? And eventually it'll disappear over the side of the earth. And they think that's perspective. The farther something gets away from you, the farther that it is, it's traveling downward. But what's really happening is you have curvature here. And as something is traveling here, it's like a plane is following the same altitude, but from your perspective, it is going down, right? Because the plane is, let's say it's up 5,000 feet. And it's keeping a relationship between the curved earth and itself. So where you are, you're always going to be really here. This is where you are, right? You're at the top of the earth. Like everything from this side is going down this way. Everything from that side is going down that way. And so here you are here. I put the person here because of the nature of the sunset. But as the sun goes down, you can't see it anymore, but it'll hit clouds up here, right? If you're a person up here, like if you're in a tall building, let's say there's someone on the beach here, and there's a tall building up here. The person in a tall building can still see the sun from their perspective because the earth isn't blocking it, the curvature of the earth. But a person who is right here can't see it. And that's why the sun will hit the bottom of the clouds, because the clouds are still, and that's why you still get refracted light. Like when there's clouds out, this is what causes the sunset. The light bounces off the clouds, and then it'll shimmy off the ocean, like if the ocean's right here. And so this is, like it's not disputable. Like when you're sitting there and you can see this happening, when you see the sun disappearing, and the sun doesn't just disappear, you see the earth blocking the sun as it goes behind the earth, right? And when it rises, it's the same thing. You see light a half hour before the sun rises. That's, the beginning of dawn, depending on how much clouds there are. But light starts coming from the sun because it's hitting the clouds and coming to where you are and reflecting. It's not, as bright as when the sun's up, but it's no longer dark. In the beginning of sunset, when the sun first becomes visible to this perspective up here. And so this is, something that is really impossible to refute. And this is just one of many things that destroys the flat earth model that doesn't really exist. Okay, so I almost never do this, but I left out 2 points that I wanted to say in the video that I forgot because I was up and doing a bunch of things. I mean, when you do voiceovers this long, you end up having the risk of repeating something and or forgetting something. And so what I forgot about the flat earth thing that I want to add was that the old guy, when I said, well, you don't have a model yet, when he said that there was an unknown celestial object. And he said, well, they've had, hundreds of years or thousands of years to establish the round earth model. And we're just getting started with this. And I said, well, yeah, then you can't say it's for sure flat. Like you're coming from a point of certainty when you haven't even developed a working model yet, right? So this is back in 2014 and 15. And like I said, I asked people over and over again, please share a video that explains the flat earth model or describe it yourself. And nobody could do it. Like I did it multiple times. I said, I'm going to make a video on flat earth and I want to make sure I understand your model. So please present it to me, right? With all the stuff to do with time zones, all these things. And nobody knew it. And I've said this over and over to people when I used to comment and have exchanges with them. Can you explain the model? And they could. Like they said, well, this other guy says this, and they get into these convoluted, or someone would be using math and talking in a way that nobody would understand them, kind of thing when they describe the model. And the problem with this was that they never really could differentiate between disproving round earth, which I don't believe that they've done, but they whatever. For them they have, right? And they're convinced that it's not round, which is fine, So then you have to move on. What are the possible solutions? Going to the Bible, going biblical, and I think I've already covered that in the previous voiceover. If not, I'll cover it coming up in the next one that I've already done. But the whole Bible thing. But, you know, there's no working model and there's no logic to it being flat, right? And so the level of conflict the flat earthers then proceeded to commence and inflict on all of us in the truth community, and then coming to people's videos and saying it's flat when they don't have a working model and they don't know how it works, but they're saying it anyway. They know something as fact when they don't even understand it. Something new that, you know, they now had to come up with a working model and couldn't, you know, is indicative of the whole thing, right? It's everything that's wrong with the internet and the truth community. The second piece was I wanted to talk about people saying I had a God complex and they're calling me a prophet or a fake prophet. And I'm none of those things, right? I never claimed to be any of those things. All I've ever claimed is that the Sajmark system, which I get into more in the voiceover that's coming up here, but I left this part out. It should go somewhere in the narrative, and, you know, might as well go here now. That I have developed an internalized relationship with God. And if you haven't done that, then you don't get the comment, right? Like if you haven't tried that, you say, no, you can't do that. Well, why? Because you don't, or you've never tried, or you know, like people have been doing it for years. And God communicates with you in some way. And the communication isn't always, you know, very clear, or, you know, it might be whatever it might be. Whatever way it is God communicates with you. But after a while, you get better at it. If you practice it, you get better at anything. And God's able to communicate with me, my soul. And the best way I can tell, the most, you know, the easiest way for me to tell is when I don't want to do something, my ego doesn't want to do something, but it keeps on coming back up again, right? And so there are people saying that, you know, I had this God complex because I said to the big parasite, you know, take what I'm saying as coming from God. And they, you know, were saying that I thought of myself as God, which is, you know, really stupid. You know, like, you know, I mean, I don't for obvious reasons, and I don't want to be. You know, people wanted to call me master for the, you know, I started doing the Gratefullness to, you know, to do a stopgap because Heartfulness had collapsed. And so I came up with a way to preserve the various type of, you know, the sittings and all these things, right? You know, and people wanted to look at me differently. I didn't even like saying I was a preceptor because that's a title from Sahaj Marg that I don't have. I don't like titles. I don't like any of these things. But people thinking of me as a master or teacher made me uncomfortable because that's not what I perceive myself as, right? And so any of these things, I'm not giving prophecies. I mean, I talk about the prophecies in the Sahaj Marg meditation, and of course I have, you know, there's prophecies in the Whispers of the Brighter World in the literature, and there's things that, you know, I agree with, and I've had my own confirmation of those things, but I certainly am not a prophet. And so when I said to the big parasite that take this as coming from God, is that you should take everything as coming from God. You should take everything that happens in your life as, you know, something that your soul has agreed to, whether it be hard or horrible or something you don't want or something that, you know, seems unbearable. It's there for a reason. That's how I took this thing. Even though I didn't want to do it, I accepted this is what God wanted me to do, and I did it, and it's played many dividends for me, right? But he's struggling with this thing, you know, whatever happened when I made the video, because he's feeling like a victim and he's denying reality. But I'm not the first person that told the guy he's toxic. I mean, all of his people who have left him, they know he's toxic and he's hateful and he's malevolent and he's got malice in his system and all these things. And he's attacking people that they don't feel comfortable with. He's heard this over and over again on the internet since he's been here. I'm not the only person they say he has parasitic behavior. I mean, these are things that people have noticed from people who were on his side before, people who are following him. I'm sure past, you know, all these people. You know, I don't say when people say you're sloppy, you know, like, you know, like got stains on my shirt or whatever from food, or, you know, if people say I'm a slob, I'm like, where's that coming from? You know, like, you know, I'm aware of it, right? People have said that my whole life. You know, I'm not a neat and tidy person. You know, I clean up, like I'll clean. You know, I'll do, you know, I'd worked as a janitor before. I'll scrub the bathroom. I'll make the bed. I, you know, pick up and things. You know, I'm not someone who doesn't clean up, but, you know, I make a lot of mess. Like I made salad. I look on the floor and there's lettuce and shit all over the place. I mean, you know, I'm not, if somebody said, oh, you're a slob, I'm like, oh, no, where's that coming from? Why are you slandering me? You know, like, I mean, these things, like I know I have these qualities. It's not, you're not the first person that told me that, right? You know, there's things that people say in the comments. I'm like, You think you're the only person that told me that? Like, I already know. Why you tell, I made the decision either to ignore it for now or whatever. But anything that's coming from people, unless it's something that they're going through and they're just projecting, which is not the case here, because, the evidence is overwhelming. This guy's got hate in the system. He uses all kinds of, negative hate speech and anger, and, he's got huge anger issues. And, I mean, just malevolence and malice and, just a darkness there. And lots of people have seen it and reflected back to him, and you won't see it, right? And so thinking that I had a God complex, because I said, take this as coming from God, was people misinterpreting what I had to say about it. And my experience was, God wanted me to say this. And maybe not to him, maybe it's for the benefit of other people, but ultimately it was the benefit for me, because I had no idea how this parasitic relationship was weighing on me and, the effects it was having. And I, have just really started to realize the benefits. Like, I feel so much better not having that in my existence, and I didn't even know, right? But with someone who was repurposing my teachings and using it for nefarious reasons with his group, a dysfunctional group that's, based in, mutual lies and self-deception and exploitation and, cult-like behavior. And he was using my name to get street cred and, all these things and, validate himself. And, I wasn't digging it, right? Like, I get to have my opinion and experience of him. And it isn't that I misread him or, I'm being like a jerk or something. Like, I could have done these videos years and years ago. And I wasn't happy with his presence in my life. And I was always uncomfortable with the bear stuff and all these bear people coming. And, they were respectful, and many of them were benefiting and, saying how good my videos were, and they were helping them. So, I tolerated it. I mean, and, I still would tolerate them because they haven't, many of them were just, good members of the viewing public. But, all of it made me uncomfortable. And so I get to say that. I get to have those feelings. I get to, say what my experience is. And the reason was, when I watched him, I saw all this stuff that I was uncomfortable with, the energy he exuded, the low vibrations, and I didn't want to be associated with him. And people would come to me saying, like, they would link me together with him in hostile comments and things, and you're just like the big parasite. I'm like, I have nothing to do with them. But for them, they thought there was some sort of relationship there. And a relationship I didn't want. And so, and it was hurting me. And, I talked about the cord cutting and things in other videos. And I feel relieved not being connected to this person, right? Like, I'm better off with this person not being in my life, and even in the slightest way, which was, him basically watching my videos and, stealing them and doing whatever he did with them, right? Like, it wasn't something I was even consciously aware of. And, people have fans now on social media, but also, in celebrities and things like this. And sometimes your fans, you don't dig them. Sometimes your fans love you and they think they're going to have a great relationship with you, and they have some sort of bizarre fantasy and think about you in ways that you're not really, you're not like that. And they come up with this imaginary person they're idolizing, and, it makes you uncomfortable. And like, they turn into like, deranged fans, and people have had stalkers or whatever it might be in the past. And, they might be into you, but you're not into them, right? When you see them, you hear them talk, you're like, oh, this person's like, I don't want anything to do with them. And you get to feel that way, right? Like, I get to feel that way about people who, they say all positive things about me, but I might not be feeling the same way. There's people who, like you and feel attracted to you, and you don't feel the same way, right? And, when somebody asks you about it, or there's, you have to, they want you to, they come out and they say, oh, I want you to, be a part of my, life or whatever. You're like, no, I don't really like you. I don't want that to be that way. I mean, you could lie about it and try to do it, whatever. But it's best if you actually tell the truth. And if the person's, mentally ill and deranged, it is what it is. But that's not your problem. It's their, it's their issues or whatever, right? That they're, just going around. And I mean, people do this to be manipulative, and they make you look like the bad guy, and like they're like being all like positive and loving to you and complimentary. But really there's like some kind of gross neediness and obsession, and, there's manipulation there. And, when you call them on it, that you look like the bad person, because the way that they're presenting is that they're just completely positive about you and you're negative about them. And what's wrong with you? Why don't you like me? Well, because you suck, right? And, I get to feel that way. Like, I get to have my opinion, And when I verbalized it, he lost it because he can't live with other people having those opinions about him. But there's more people that have that opinion of him than he has fans in the truth community. I think it's many times. Like it's probably 20 times. Like it's a 21 ratio of people who have a negative opinion about him who share my opinion, and then the people who like him, and a lot of those people will inevitably be burned by him, and he'll turn on them, and those people will join the club of haters, right? Or people who don't like him. Okay, so I didn't show you that because I want to convince flat earthers that they're wrong, because that's impossible. People who are flat earthers, real flat earthers, there's no doing that. And when you present something like that with them, the majority of them get defensive, they get aggressive, and they label you because you're a shill, you're a horrible person. Everybody who's not with them is evil. Like that's, the majority of them. That's what we had to deal with. And of course that migrated over to the Cubies, which made them ripe for being in a cult. Like in a cult, there is a cult leader and a cult belief system. And everybody who's outside the cult is doomed, is, horrible person. It doesn't get it. It's like sheeple versus truthers, and has to be avoided, attacked, not listened to. Don't have any value. They're trying to undermine your belief system. They're trying to attack the host, and you're basically at war with them constantly. And so that's how a cult is formed, right? Like with most cults, you see this with Freemasonry, you see it with Scientology, you see it with, lesser known organizations, that there's people at the top who have information that other people don't have. Like you have to donate more money, you have to do more work to get exposed to the information. The higher you go up and the longer you are involved, the more devotional you are, the more information you're given. And with the flat earthers and the Cubies, like most Cubies didn't go on 4chan. They listened to other people explain the Q drops, right? And with flat earthers, most of them couldn't tell you how the flat earth model works because there is none. Like there's no real working model. And they'll say, well, this guy knows, go watch his video. Or this guy explains it here. Well, why can't you explain it? Because you're sure of it. Like if you're sure of it, but you don't understand the model. Well, no, I saw this stuff about how the earth can't be round. Well, that doesn't mean it's flat, right? And that's inherent to the basic problem with flat earth, that you could disprove the earth is round. Like that, I don't know, if it wasn't round, you could disprove it. But that doesn't mean it's flat, right? The flat part comes from the Old Testament where he said God picked up the earth by four corners or something like this, which the model that they have now is round, so, it doesn't have four corners anyway. But the Old Testament's a horrible book. And the problem with the flat earth and people who are in the flat earth who also hate Jewish people, hates the Jews, is that the Old Testament is the Jewish Bible. And that it's Judeo-Christianity. If you're a Christian, you're half Jewish. Half of your belief system is built on Judaism. Christ was a Jew, and the Bible is their Bible. The Old Testament is their Bible, the book of Genesis, all these things. And so what they believe is what you believe, at least in part. You also believe in the New Testament, but a lot of people are Old Testament Christians. They're fire and brimstone, wrathful God Christians. It's a horrible book. It's not about God. The way that the Old Testament presents God is inaccurate. And God is not wrathful. God isn't narcissistic. God isn't egotistical. God isn't petty. All the bad things that they mischaracterize God. Like, it's a bad book. And there's a lot of just, bad teachings in it, including the idea of firmament, and it's primitive and all these things. Jesus doesn't talk about the firmament, right? The Bible is an okay book. It's not great. Jesus had his issues. And, if you grew up as a Christian, you're going to be prejudiced to think that Jesus was the greatest saint and higher developed soul that ever lived, the Son of God. And with every belief system, with every religion, there's something they use to get it to be cult-like. And the thing that's cult-like in Christianity is John 3:16, about how Jesus is the only way you get to heaven, because everyone else is going to hell, and you're the only group that's going to heaven. It's a very powerful cult-like teaching, right? And you have that in every religion, right? You know, the caste system and the Hindu tradition. There are things that, you know, create the issues that bind people to some sort of form of slavery. Each religion has that. And, you know, these religions have to be cult-like to retain their membership, and they need threats and bribes, you know, the idea that you're going to get something if you do a good job, and the threat of what's going to happen to you if you don't listen to them and obey them. You know, go to hell. And so, you know, these religions are remedial. And if that's the best you can do, that's fine. There are some people who can't rise up to spirituality, right? Who can't have an interpersonal relationship with God, an internalized relationship with God. You know, the kingdom of heaven within, as Jesus said. Like Jesus had an internal relationship with God. And people who have that are operating on a higher plane of existence. They just are. They see things from a better perspective. And not just material things, like it's less important than material things, but they see things, you know, on a spiritual level, and they're connected to their soul in a way, and they're operating in a different level of consciousness. And for those of us who have ventured into the spiritual world, it doesn't end there, because like you see what happened with Heartfulness and Daji. Daji was, you know, an advanced spiritual person who had developed, a good spiritual condition and approach through the Sajmark system, and he was given lots of various powers and abilities, spiritual abilities and things, to do the spiritual work and be the master of the system. And he folded like a card house. And you could look at that and say, hey, you know, to me or anybody who does it, you suck, and you know your system sucks because look at your guy. But it's still higher than if you're in a religion or you're not in anything. I hope you can understand this. Probably you can if you're not there. But it is. And people who are living that kind of a life are farther ahead on their journey. But there's lots of sucky people, or we're all sucky to some extent. And we all have the capacity to do materialistic things and do low-level things. I mean, with each of the masters of the Sajmark system, their first two they tried to kill him. Charji was poisoned. They tried to kill Babaji. There's these advanced people with spiritual abilities that tried to steal Babaji's powers and, you know, will him to death with using, you know, psychic spiritual battle techniques and things. I mean, you know, even on the onset, there's like 200 people, you know, and you know, 5 or 10 of them were dicks that, you know, tried to usurp the whole system, tried to grab it for their own because they were egotistical POSs. And so even spiritual people or saints and higher developed souls can have their, you know, low moments, or they can fall completely. And that's the idea behind Satan, who was an angel. So it's always there potentially for people. Their egos gets too big and they have a spiritual fall. And so, you know, it isn't like the people who are spiritual can, like, you know, walk with a swagger, because, you know, you always have to be on guard to stay true to the path. But it is a leap up from religion. Religions are, you know, they are all in one form or another cult-like or out and out culty. And they have ways of controlling the people that are in it. And they're built on disinformation. But there's lots of people in the so-called truth community who can't confront their Christian beliefs or their attachment to the Bible. And so they still are clinging to the idea of flat earth. And the people who are running the system are anti-God. Scientists are, you know, many times atheistic, and they're not, you know, they're against God. And so if somebody like Neil deGrasse Tyson, I don't know what his religious beliefs are, but people like that who are pro-science, they can't be trusted because they're, you know, anti-God, and they're arrogant, and their science is also flawed. You know, all these ways that they manipulate the science, the way that the clergy used to manipulate the Bible or the Word of God, you know, their, you know, version of the Word of God, and use it towards their own ends, right? And so both suck. Like, it isn't like one's right and one's wrong, but people who are religious, you know, want something to debunk science. And so when they heard that there was a theory out there that the earth is flat, they gravitated to it, and they didn't need to do research because they weren't capable of it. And so they don't understand the model. And like I said, that made them ripe to, you know, migrate over to the you know, the cubies, and also to be scooped up by the big parasite and used and monetized for his, you know, whatever cult thing he's got going on there. And so for them, there was one guy who was willing to say the stuff that they knew to be true, about the flat earth and about Jewish people and about, blacks and then all this other gamma stuff and these things that he folded into it. And he's being deplatformed and everyone's out to get him and all these people, and all the people he pissed off, he systematically pissed off. It just, galvanized the group and pulled them together and became us against everybody else. But that wasn't enough of a dogma because the big parasite is not a godly person. He doesn't have a good heart. He doesn't have a connection to his soul. He's not somebody with a, everyone has some kind of connection with his soul, but he's not seeking it out. His ego is is like a monstrosity, right? So being challenged from outside and having hatred and being like a group that is, all the anger and all the, the disrespect and all the things that the group people had suffered as flat earthers, they were just ready to lash out at people. And so him lashing out and, doing these things was like, he was their like avenging angel. And so that's why they, accept these behaviors that are clearly counterproductive. But he doesn't have something good. Like he has like the theory about, the gamma stuff that he lifted off of somebody else. He doesn't have original stuff. He just came into the truth community not knowing anything, and he just picked together a dogma that he put together, the stuff with Jews and the stuff with, flat earth and the stuff with the gamma stuff and all the other things. And, the attacking other people and grabbing their audience. And, he's structured in a way that this is the way to bring in new people. This is the way to get money out of them. This is the way to, to demonize all these people, Joe Rogan or, some of these flat earth guys, anybody who, that he used as a target so that he could get people to file in behind him and support him. But he didn't have something like positive. He didn't have some, higher developed stuff or things that were inspirational. If you've seen the book of Eli, the book is the Bible, which, spoiler alert. And there's a guy who's running a town and, it's post-apocalyptic and there's no Bibles. He can't find one. He wants to use the Bible to control the people because he knows it's a powerful tool, even though he himself doesn't believe in it, to control the people. So if he had the Bible, he could read it to the people and explain it in a way that would best suit him. He could control his village better. And so that's what the conflict is about. But the problem for the big parasite is all hate groups turn on each other, which is already happening there, where people are challenging him, like people who are negative in their approach. And this is a big problem in the truth community because everyone's looking at the controllers and looking at the system and it being bad, but they don't have a solution. They don't take responsibility for their contribution to the system. So it is a group that's always going to be focused on criticism and negativity and a lack of personal responsibility and honesty. And so there's always inevitable conflicts over beliefs. It becomes a place where there's just these belief wars. And that was happening in his community. And I guess it's been happening fairly recently, but over time. And people, feel taken advantage of. People see through it. They get close to whatever's going on. And, and then his way of dealing with conflict is to go all out and demonize the person and try to turn everyone against them. And that's backfired because it can't hold up, right? There was a hate group when I lived in Idaho. There was there's these militia little hate groups and things there. And, I did an internship in Boise and then moved to the Panhandle. And when I was moving to the Panhandle, I watched the local news. And it was a time when there was a hate group that used to go there in their compound and camp out. And this mother and son were driving by in a real crappy car. Like they were poor people. And the car backfired. And it sounded like a gunshot. And the people came out of the compound, these dudes, and they pistol whipped the guy and they threatened him and they kidnapped him. And they got, arrested and sued. The mother and son won the compound, right, in the lawsuit. And I heard a cop talking about it. He said, these groups come up here and they ultimately start fighting with each other. Like the personalities that are there, they're all hateful and they're all aggressive. And so they turn on each other. And he said, we have to go there, break up fights and do whatever. And then they just all go back to where they're from. It's like a constant thing that it just became a place up there, the woods. And it's almost like Canada up there. It's all natural and wildlife, all these things. I don't know where the big parasites thing is in relationship, but Idaho is a a place with a lot of nature. And so when you have a group that's based in negativity and isolated, attacking other people, and everyone else is a shill, all these things, we saw it with the Cubies, we saw it with the Flat Earthers, it ends up turning in on itself. And then everyone pisses everyone else off, and then they don't get along with each other. It's like the end of like an abusive family situation based in lies and the inability to change and grow and evolve. And so the big parasite needed other information. So he gravitated to people like me who, I have the opposite approach. Like I talk about hatred being something inside of you. Like your hate, the object of your hate is outside, but the hatred that is inside of you is your hate. You have to get rid of it. You have to find your hate and throw it out of your system because you constantly are projecting on other people, which the big parasite, said that he learned these things from me, but I don't think he was being sincere. Maybe he was, in his own mind, but he continues to use hate. Now he's projected at me, before it was that other guy, but he just does that, not taking responsibility for what's inside of him. And so my message and the spiritual message and things he said, he believed in samskaras and, he believed in a lot of things that I was saying. He was, having the same issues that he thought he was having with his group that was going on with Saj Marg, but, he's a cult leader, the heartfulness thing. And he was using my information to help galvanize his support, but it was, the two things can't coexist, right? The stuff I do, my channel can't coexist with flat earthers and cubies and people who have all, made our lives worse and wrecked something that we created, that they weren't a part of initially. And they've taken it down a stupid, path of failure and disaster. The problem with, this went for a walk with my wife, but the problem, going back to this comment or these comments these people left me, and the way that the flat earthers and the Cubies behaved. It's just not them. You can see it with like vegans. Like it's just a group of people who think their way is the only way. And of course, religion with, all these religions where, if everyone else is going to hell and you got to save them. And so when that's your point of view, you got to save the children, the Cubies, right? That's your point of view, that your group is the only one that's doing anything and your group is the only one that's right and everyone else is wrong. It's the way that truthers feel towards sheeple, that you can justify any treatment of them because they're like demonic or shills or going the wrong way or, they're causing a problem. And that's why they've behaved in this way. And there's just a lot of dumbasses, right? People who don't have the ability for abstract thought, people who are weak and need to, follow a group, and they can't use critical thinking skills, or they can't live with uncertainty. They can't say, well, this is an unproven theory, the flat earth theory or whatever. They can't live with other people having different beliefs than them. Everything's binary. And such people are always worthless and going to cause problems, right? They're just going to be a negative on the overall, truth community, and then like an individual channel like mine. They're just going to cause dissent, and, they're always going to be waiting for you to say the wrong thing and say something that makes them question their belief system and turn on you. And that's in part some of my relief from doing this, because I didn't know, any of this stuff, right? I was only very vaguely aware of it all. So going back to this experiment, the idea of feeling transmission. Okay, I went and did some work on the pond and other things outside, and I went for a walk with my wife and some other things. So I got, a little bit out of the flow of what I was doing. I was just about to start talking about the experiment, feeling the transmission, that you may or may not have tried at the beginning of the video, right? I want to get back to that in a moment. So it's important to understand that the big parasites group of people is brought together by untruths, right? No personal responsibility, not connecting with God. Like the whole problem with, part of the truth community, a big part, is the lack of confrontation of the Bible. Like most Christians don't read the Bible and aren't actively practicing Christianity. Going to church is not practicing Christianity. When I went to church and I went to Catholic, I was Catholic, and I went to church and sat there and kneeled and stood up and kneeled and sat there, and I was daydreaming, and my dad would go twice a year, Christmas and Easter, because he was mad at God, and like all these kind of things, right? My family and all this, and all the people there, and if you're not actively wanting to be a better Christian and knowing what that means, like there's really good Christians out there. There's really good Muslims, really good, people, Hindus, all these things, Jewish people, all of them. Native American, Aboriginal, Druids, all these people who are really into it. And they know the system, and they aren't using the system to like feel superior to atheists and other people who aren't, doing it as good as they are. They're not using it to boost their ego. They're looking to improve themselves and to be better servants of God. In some cases, they become spiritual people, right? They become, people who have an inner relationship with God. There's something that Swami Vivekananda said. It's wonderful to be born in a religion and horrible to die in one. Because a religion teaches you about God and gives you the fundamental building blocks of character development and other things if you're doing it, if your parents are really religious and there's some work on it. But at some point you have to graduate to being a spiritual person. And that's the next stage. It's next level. And everybody should understand that, right? There's another level. If you can do it or not, if you can't do it, you can't do it. But be aware that it is the next stage, is when you have internalized relationship with God. And then people who are having that relationship are elevated to the next level. I've talked about Master Charge, the third master of the Sage Mark system, said, the lowest part of the higher, which is the spiritual, when somebody enters the spiritual field, is still higher than the highest part of the lower, the material. So the people who are on the top of the material system, whether it's economically or, in terms of their, athletic ability or their academic ability, and they're really good at life, right? People who are really winning at life, those people are still lower than the people who are struggling in life and struggling on the spiritual field. They're failing on both counts, right? But at least they're elevated to that next level, right? What we're dealing with here is kindergarten. Religion is kindergarten. And so if you're even in first grade, that's a step up. Second grade, you can still have a lot of work to go, but you've graduated from kindergarten. The majority of people, that's their level of, their spiritual level. Kindergarten and not even starting kindergarten, like preschool, before, they're pre-spiritual. And one of the problems with America, it's a worldwide phenomenon, but it's worse in America than other places, is dumbasses think that they're knowers. And that the internet hasn't helped with that. It's made it much worse. So people who don't have the ability for abstract thought or on a very low level of their, whatever they're doing, end up thinking they know everything. They just think they know, and this is like people gravitate to the flat earth and the QB stuff or any of these, binary groups, and they just think they're a part of it and they're so much better than everyone else who's not in the group, and then they get this group mentality, right? And so the problem with that is all these people are coming from a place of a lower level place, hatred, blaming Jewish people and black people, whoever, non-white people for the collapse of the system, right? They're blaming everyone else but themselves for their miserable lives. And then, the flat earth thing is a lie, it's based in religion and, all these things. And so you might come together as a group, but you have to be able to confront the fact that you've gone down the wrong path and you're following things, and somebody who's deceiving you. It's a deception, right? So many people said they were feeling bad all the time listening to this guy, the big Parasite. They were angry all the time. Hey, I got so many messages and comments you can read on the videos where people are saying that this is how they felt. They were there, with him. They watched him for 5 years and felt immediate relief when they cut themselves free. And they stopped watching him because of the hatred and anger and the negativity and the group consciousness and all of it. The condition, his spiritual condition, his emotional and psychological condition was having a negative effect, which I could see and recognize right off the bat. I first saw him. And like when you're in the psychological field and you've dealt with people like this in your personal life and professionally, you just see them, like you just know. And you're like, oh boy, like you've had that experience. And, it's never going to end up well because people like this are even more incapable of changing, but everyone has resistance to changing. And that's what this is about. So when people in that group start to see that it's hurting them and they want to change, or maybe they kind of, they wake up to the flat earth deception and all the, the firmament, like all that stuff, right? It's just firmament, like I used to say, they just It's, every time I made a video where I mentioned the Earth being, round, and not even, it was implied in what I was saying, or I talked about space, and people go, "It's flat. It's flat, right?" One of my first videos was Michelle Obama is 95% chance that she's a dude, which again I would, change the video and it'd be a much better video, and far few people would watch it. Fewer people would watch it. I mean, that's the problem. Like, you can make a video like that, and it got 2 million views. Could have got many more. I mean, YouTube ended up sort of suppressing it, but the videos I made back then were far worse than they are now. And I've evolved as a creator, and I've evolved as my understanding of things. And so the video I made now would only be seen by a fraction of those people, right? And so when you say something like you hate Trump or dislike Biden, then you have a wide audience of people that agree with that statement. And if you make your channel kind of about that, you have to maybe do things to, make yourself stand out, because there's lots of channels like that, but you have a wide audience. And when you start off in the truth community and you subscribe to certain narratives and beliefs and things like this, you're going to have more and more potential viewers. But then as you move forward and evolve, and you like understand things on a different level than other people, and you realize a Republican Party is just as bad as a Democratic Party, boom, cuts your potential viewers down by a bunch, right? And then as you go through these different things, you end up getting into religion and some of these other things. Before you know it, you have almost nobody that is willing to give your videos a shot, because people all want somebody to support their beliefs. And so when the big Parasite acknowledged these people who were so desperate to be acknowledged, they had a lot of energy and they felt good, and, they came together, whatever. I mean, I don't know how the thing was when it started off, but it's doomed because it's all based in things that, if you're going to be honest and truthful, you have to confront all those things, and you're going to have to evolve. And as you do that, the group's going to turn on you like they did the QBs turned on people. When QBs, had a reality check, and they came in and realized that the goalposts were always being moved, and their movement was a disaster, and other things were coming true, and Trump wasn't as good as, and then all of a sudden they make a video about that, and everybody turns on him. I told you about this guy. I watched a little bit of his video. He was a young guy, and he had, friends who were friends before they became QBs, and they had a joint podcast, and he said he didn't believe it anymore, and the other guys who were his friends trashed him on the internet and kicked him out of the group, and basically disowned him, and all of those things. So getting back to the experiment, if you tried it and you felt some transmission, then you're just on a different level than lots of people. If you didn't feel it, it isn't like a total indicator, because it's a hard thing to feel in 5 minutes, and you could just be, what your condition is. It's not an easy thing. It's not the best conditions for the experiment. Some people take 3 months to feel it, and other people take some time for it to start working and transforming them. But not everybody gets it. And there was a 1 out of 40 people who tried it, and the 40 people were usually educated, and they were people who, at least outside of India, who, they weren't dummies. They weren't, they were seeking something, spiritual or divine or whatever, and they just couldn't feel it. And that's unfortunate, but the people that can, I don't want to call them special, but, they're lucky and privileged, and it's a gift. And I was saying I was low functioning, and the big Parasite was making fun of that, but, I was unmotivated by my material life here. Didn't fit in, really didn't have any reason to. I didn't have goals and didn't have things I wanted to achieve in the material world, because there was some other reason. I've done that before, right? I believe I've had a past life where I was a not good king. And I lived a very, very, very long time. If this person's semi-famous in Indian, Asura king. And if that's the case, I got desensitized to all these things. I experienced them and all the things with money and power and these other things. And so I'm not, I don't have ambition in that way. But anyways, once I started Saj Marg and I experienced a transmission and cleaning, I became a much higher functioning person. I had failed out of college 2 times. I quit college, and I went back for a third, got my degree, and then later got my master's degree. I've built 4 homesteads. I learned how to, milk cows for 6 years, made a variety, 6 or 7 different kinds of cheeses, all kinds of foods that were grown, learned how to scythe, learned how to build earth ovens, so many different homesteading things, I can't even count them, right? Even, learning more now. Learn how to drive a tractor, use the various implements and things. Some of these people grow up with it, but I had to, learn these things later in life. Learn how to drive a bulldozer and you work a skid steer, backhoe, things like this. And, evolve in my mechanical abilities, being able to fix things and put things together and, do things problem solve. And then all the stuff with animals, the chickens, the goats, the cows, and other things like this. And the stuff with my family. I delivered a child. My last child was a home birth. I mean, all kinds of different ways. The YouTube channel, written books. I'm functioning on a much higher level, and the quality of my work is better. Like when I played basketball before I did the Sajmark meditation, I was too rushed and too whatever, and I wouldn't just out of the flow. And then when I started to play afterwards, I was at the tail end of my athletic time as an athlete in my early 30s. I was just next level, and that stuff comes through in the videos and things. It's all due to the transmission and cleaning. It elevates people, and as bad or good as I am now, I'm still better than I was, right? Whatever I have to work on as a person, my shortcomings, and there's, I see them all the time, things I could be doing better. But I'm still much better than I was, and that's, an important distinction, right? Whatever the raw material that I was before and after, the system helped me be better at all these things and just be a better person, more loving, better in relationships. I was unable to sustain relationships for more than a year or two, like a year and a half. Wasn't able to hold jobs for a very long period of time. And I just, all those things. I was in a crappy marriage for 18 years and then another one now, I think, for 5 years, 2018, I believe. So 5 years, maybe 6 years now. I don't know. I think it's 5. So, and that's just the material performance. On a spiritual level, I've been much better. And all the meditation, the time I've put in, 30 years of meditating and all the practice and cleaning and the stuff I've done I worked as a preceptor and, the books I've read and all the ways I've changed internally. And, I know that the Sajmark system is unique and a rare gift. And, there's still lots of problems that people have. Like I said, all the stuff that's happened in the organization and the collapse of the master, which was unthinkable, him falling and all those things. But even with that, it's transformational and people can rise up to it. It's a solution and, very few people can do it and it's sad, but, what are you going to do? Like it's there. It's unfortunate that people can't do it, but, that doesn't stop it from being great. When the flat earth thing first came out, and I looked into it, then I saw how stubborn the flat earth people were. And I realized it was a binary thing, being flat, right? It was going back from the third dimension to the second dimension. It was de-evolving. Like there's things that we have learned through our understanding scientifically and otherwise that primitive people just wouldn't be able to understand because they were limited to their location. They didn't know about time zones. There wasn't travel wasn't a thing. And, they believed the earth was flat, which, to them, it made sense because there was nothing that would make them think it was round. And, there was an evolution of that. And, of course, there's a bigger evolution that it's all an illusion. It's this is some sort of a simulation. But going back to that and going back to this primitive, level of thinking because the system itself is corrupt and evil and they lie to you about everything else. They might as well be lying about this. And, of course, the Bible and the firmament, it was like a complete disaster. It just took the truth community in the wrong direction. And like I said, it proliferated into became a, malignant tumor that was the QBs and then, spawn off groups like the big parasites and, all these things. And they've just been, a complete drag and a bummer, going down instead of up. The belief in itself, if it's just a light belief, it's like, I don't know, maybe it's this way, I don't know, I'll consider it or whatever. But the certainty that they have, most of them, and the disdain they have for everyone who won't see what they see, and just how they present themselves in the way that they were in the infighting, the drama, and all the things, right? And it's fundamentally dishonest, right? It's something where, you have to, I mean, there's just things that it's not, everyone can get duped and people can believe something that's not true or misinterpret something. And, it's not knowledge that needs to change. It's the way that you approach truth, but being willing to change and adapt in these things, and, not be looking at everyone else to change and think that you got it right and everyone else has got it wrong, which has been the plague of the truth community. So there it is. And for people who experience the transmission, like I said, if you can feel it, that's a huge step. People who didn't, you can try again later or whatever if you're interested in it. It's not a done deal. Like I said, it's not the best conditions to try something like that. But even people who feel it, I mean, many of them quit and they just can't sustain it because it means you have to change. And that's the issue with the Sajmark system, that everybody who experiences it has to change. There's something they have to change about themselves. Anybody entering the spiritual field, there's constructs and things you've learned from your system, your family, your, whatever, your ego's, the predisposition of your ego. You end up having to, rearrange these things, get out of habitual thinking, habitual ways of being in the world. And, it's tough. And that's why it's, been limited success, because, people just don't want to change. But we're at a time where, change is, mandatory. There's going to be whatever happening in the near future. And, if people don't change and embrace a connection with the divinity within, how are they going to survive when the system collapses? I mean, yeah, they might build skills in these things, but, the system collapsing for a reason, because we suck and the system sucks, and there needs to be something better. And we, have to contribute to that in some way. And that's us changing and evolving. Anyways, just going to wrap this thing up here. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely reporting from the Apocalypse and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.